Hey, government guys. So here is 4.3. There's two quizzes. The first one is about equal protection. And, sorry. Chords. Okay, so the past unit we've talked about civil liberties. Remember those were, oh, baby, careful. Let's just move it out. Those were the liberties and protections you got in the Bill of Rights. Okay, they're your natural rights. They are your rights that everybody has. Yep, you have them at birth. The civil rights are basically rights that are meant to protect people, to make them equal to each other. People were not born with these rights, but they gained these rights through many different things. Okay, we'll talk about those in a second. Okay, I'm going to tell you about a few amendments. Okay, so after Civil War, we have a few amendments which we call the Reconstruction Amendments. Okay, that's the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So 13th made slavery unconstitutional. 14th, everybody was equal and you can't take rights of citizens away without due process. And 15th is blacks could vote. Okay. No matter their skin color. So they say black, really that means everybody. It's not just everybody besides the American Indians, that is, because they don't get a vote until 1924 with the American Indian Civil Act. Oh. Okay, so these are the Reconstruction Amendments. They took place in the federal government kind of occupied the South for a while after the Civil War to make sure that these were followed. Several years, probably within a decade of after the Civil War, they left, which means that states can start, they don't follow these amendments, but they don't not follow these amendments. So basically they put up barriers to keep blacks from doing equal things anyways, like voting. You have literacy tests, or you have to pay a fee. Honey, you have to stay here if you're going to be talking, if you're going to hold this. And they only required African Americans to do that. They didn't require whites to do that. Just if you were black, you had to, read something, or you had to memorize a certain passage from the state constitution, which who the heck has it all memorized, So they had ridiculous laws. Let's see. So segregation laws set in. I'm going to put this down so we can see it. Okay, so segregation laws, like here's where the whites are going to do their thing and here's where the blacks are going to do thing. This is where the whites will sit. This is where the blacks will sit. So this was so common in almost every aspect in the South. We have a case where there's this guy named Plessy. He gets on a train, and he's biracial, so he looks pretty white, but he looks just dark enough that you could probably pick him out if he's with just white people, but basically he looks pretty white, so some people convinced him you should go into the white portion of the train, and so he's like, all right, and so he goes, and they arrest him for sitting in the blacks only section. So he takes the train to court, and they say, well, there's a commerce rule that you violated, so you had your own car, that you have equal opportunities to sit on the car. It's not like we didn't allow you. So of course they use the 14th Amendment to say, well, we gave you an equal chance of sitting in the car. We didn't say where, but you at least got to sit in the car, right? So you're not allowed up there, boy. So this cartoon I really like. Ignore this part for a second. Plessy versus Ferguson basically said that they are separate but equal. Okay, that is huge to remember. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. So we can keep you guys separate, and as long as you guys both have your own thing, it's equal. this is just saying that separate is not equal, which people realize later on. And this is kind of like more like the reality. This is a little bit exaggerated in regards to a lot of things, but for the most part, it was a very obvious difference between what was allowed to the whites and what was allowed to the blacks. Okay, so about 50 years, just over 50 years later, we have this is Brown versus Board of Education. This is a court case where this girl, she is denied going to the elementary school closest to her, and also just looking this court case, they looked at all of the aspects of schools. They looked at all the white schools, they looked at the black schools, and they saw that all of the white schools had everything that they need, and things were clean and supported, and the black schools, they had horrible facilities and not, clean water. Children are going to get spankings, which they probably did then. So this court case, they looked at it and they're like, they're not equal because of the money going into it. All the white schools, they had all the affluent white parents who were able to put money into that school, and all the black parents, they had not so much money to put into that school, so that had unequal financial gains. And that's kind of a battle that people are still fighting today. But this was a huge thing because they decided that separate is not equal. So you can no longer have segregation. So this, it was really great. It did take a long time. Edwin, knock it off. You don't knock it off, you're going to be going time out. It took a long time for people to actually start following this, but it was good because it allowed people to finally stop discriminating so much. Now, after Brown versus Board of Education, other minority groups started realizing, maybe we could do something to address how we are discriminated and we are disadvantaged. So it helped lots of other minority groups see that and be able to win in the courtroom, and have movements like the Black Civil Rights Movement was. So the Black Civil Rights Movement, I really want you guys to understand this, is basically like the springing board for all the other minority groups' movements. They all looked at the Black rights movements and took ideas and examples from that movement and applied it to what they were going to do, and that helped them be successful too. It's a long road. It took decades, okay, for the Black Civil Rights Movement to actually work. Okay, that's pretty much it that you need to know. There's some lawsuits that are talked about in the unit, but they review at the beginning of the quiz, so just look over that and you will be good. Okay, so that is it for this. Trying to pause it. This is for the first quiz in 4.3.